This tutorial is going to show you how to use Procreate to add marker to our handheld whisk sheet using masks and layers, and why we may use this digitally rather than do it by hand. As you can see here, I've already got my scanned in sheet. It's called Untitled Artwork. If I click it, I should be able to rename this Handheld Whisk, and maybe give it a name, your name. Let's do done. Okay, so there is my handheld whisk. Now if I select that, it obviously comes full scale. I can use 2-finger pinch to resize, like so. Now, the way this is going to work is, I've got my 2 layers that it's automatically created. One is the background layer, and one is the scan sheet. The way that we want to use Procreate is by using layers, and ideally not touch this sheet at all in terms of adding colour to it, that we will always leave this as what we call our base sheet. So I'm going to click on the plus, layer 2, I'm going to touch layer 2 there and choose rename. And in the rename, I'm going to call this blue marker, okay, and this will be for my blue marker pen. So now I have my layer here, but I'm going to go back to my original in a moment. Before I do, I'm going to click on my brush here, and what I want to do is make sure I've got a marker pen selected. In this instance, I've got Real Marker selected from the Sketch-A-Day Mega Pack 2. Okay, it's a great marker, very, very realistic. I've set my marker thickness over here on this scale here to 35%, which is a good thickness for this sketching. So now what we need to do is create our first mask. Now in order to create a mask, we can't be on the blue layer, because if we turn off the other 2, there is nothing there. What we want to do is select from this selection, from our original selection. So I'm going to pick the mask tool, I'm going to zoom in with my fingers, and what we want to do is pick the areas of this. Okay, so we want to make sure that it's set to automatic and it's set to add. So if I touch in the layer, as you can see by just touching in there, it's selected everything. I don't want that, so perhaps that's my selection threshold. So what I'm going to do is 2-finger tap, let's just undo. Okay, let's just make sure we've got the layer selected we have. Let's go back to our mask tool, let's start here. And as you can see, immediately now, I'm being able to select the panels that I want to. Now, sometimes when we do this, we get a very jagged line. That can be due to the threshold. So what we want to do is change the threshold to make it smoother. By dragging the pen across, we can get a smoother finish to those sections. So you can see by me just dragging across here, what's happening, it's smoothing the lines out. If I want it in this bit here, because I've got a little white line, if I just, there you go, you can see. Let's just check up here. Up here it's not that smooth, so let's just, there we go. It's that little bit smoother, I don't want that one. And that's how we use the threshold tool. So now I have the area that I want to be my mask. So now I'm going to touch here on my layers, and what it's done is I've got these lines which is showing that this is the only area that I can work in. But the most important thing that I do now is not work on my original, but work on the blue marker layer. So I've changed my color already. I picked a blue color, which is signified here. I've got my marker, so now I'm ready to mark it. Now, just like not using normal marker pens, we want to change the angle of our piece of paper so that when we're sketching, we can sketch in a more comfortable, in a more natural position. So for me, that's something like that. So I'm going to get my pencil, okay, and what I can do is go over like that, okay? So I've just pressed gently, you don't have to press hard. I'm just going to undo because I missed. Let's just get my angle a little bit better. I'm going to make sure that my opacity is at 100, okay, and there's my first stroke. Then you make a decision, are you happy, are you not happy? So if I'm not happy, I could do that one again. And if I use my marker slightly on the line, of course, one of the things I can do is it won't show the marker where the mask is. So let me just show you again. So that gives me a nice thin line, and this is the real advantage now of using masks. So let's put in my other marker. So here we go, first coat, not having to press very hard, just adding my marker. I'm just going to press slightly harder on that one. Okay, something like that. And then at the bottom of the object's always darker, so let's go across. Okay, adding our marker in. So we've already started to use our marker. Now, following the normal rules, which is that all edges are always dark. So what we want to do is go around our area here. So we'll just add a little bit of marker gently around those. We're going to add it around our button. And of course, the nice thing here is if you go inside the button, it doesn't matter. Let's add some marker at the bottom of this one, and let's add some marker to the top of this one. That gives us our first layer of marker. So now we're ready to add our second coat. So let's turn it round. Now the thing with digital sketching is, it's slightly different than normal markers. It is pressure related, but if you want the darker tone, then quite often what you've got to do is darken it in the tones. So I'll show you that in a moment. So let's just get this spin round. Let's just add a little bit more marker there, and I'm going to add a little bit more on this edge, as we would with normal markers. But now, at this point, what I want to do is darken my tone. So I'm going to grab it here, not move this one, but just move this and move it lower down, which is trying to keep the same blue, but add more grey into it, and therefore changes the tone. Now what I'm going to do is just turn my opacity down a little bit, otherwise it can look quite harsh. Spin it round again, and now I'm going to add a bit more depth on this side. So if you just notice now, what you should start to see is a slightly darker tone of marker. So I'm just going across. Okay, that one shows it perhaps a little bit better for you. Okay, so there we go. So accidentally pressed, must have pressed on the pencil to get the eraser. So let's 2-finger tap, go back, just make sure we're on the brush. Okay, something like that. Then let's follow the normal rules, which is all edges are always dark. Let's just go around. Let's go around our button. Just going to do it on one side here, not at the top. And we're going to add a bit of shadow underneath. Okay, and just like with a normal marker, it depends if the pencil is pointed straight down or at an angle, depending on the thickness of your line work. So that's just something like that. So I'm quite happy now with my blue tone. If I want to, I could go one stage darker on this edge by just grabbing my tone and dragging it much further down. Let's just demonstrate this one. We'll just add a little bit on this side here. So something like that, and a little bit just on the bottom, and you can see suddenly I get a much darker edge. And if I make my marker, a little bit thinner at this point now, just add a little bit shadow tone around my button and just at the bottom here of the vents. One last bit, just on this edge here. Now, there's an issue, as you can see, because of my marker is so thin. So let's pop my marker back up to 35, 36. Okay, and just something like that. Okay, which is our first layer. So now if we go to our layers, you can see that this is my blue marker layer. So now if I want to work on another part, what I can do is add a new layer, and I can choose this one. Let's call it Handle, and I'm going to call it Orange, something like that. Okay, so hit return. Okay, now notice my mask is still selected. Okay, so if I go into my mask here, then I've suddenly just turned my mask off, and now I'm ready to select a new mask for this part.